What if I told you that right now, one of the world's worst humanitarian catastrophes is unfolding, and most people have never heard about it? While global attention focuses elsewhere, Sudan, a country of over 45 million people, is being torn apart by a brutal civil war that has already claimed tens of thousands of lives and displaced over 10 million people. That's roughly the entire population of Portugal forced from their homes. This is the story of Sudan's ongoing crisis, how it started, why it matters, and what it means for the future of an entire region. On April 15, 2023, gunfire erupted across Khartoum, Sudan's capital. But this wasn't a protest or a coup. This was the beginning of an all-out war between two military factions that had supposedly been allies. On one side, the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. On the other, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, a paramilitary group commanded by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hemedti. Within hours, fighter jets screamed over residential neighborhoods. Artillery fire shook hospitals and schools. Civilians found themselves trapped in the crossfire of a conflict they never asked for. But to understand how Sudan got here, we need to rewind a few years. In 2019, something remarkable happened in Sudan. After months of protests, one of Africa's longest-ruling dictators, Omar al-Bashir, was finally overthrown. Crowds flooded the streets of Khartoum in celebration. For a brief moment, it seemed like Sudan might finally transition to democracy. But here's the problem. Revolutions don't just need to remove the old guard. They need to build something new. And in Sudan, the military wasn't ready to give up power. Al-Burhan and Hemedti, who had both played roles in removing Bashir, formed an uneasy alliance with civilian leaders. A power-sharing agreement was supposed to lead to elections and civilian rule. Instead, in October 2021, al-Burhan launched a coup, dissolving the transitional government and arresting civilian leaders. For the next year and a half, al-Burhan and Hemedti ruled together in a fragile partnership. But both men commanded their own armies, both wanted ultimate power, and neither was willing to integrate their forces. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, and when negotiations over military integration broke down in April 2023, the powder keg exploded. To understand this war, you need to understand the two main forces fighting it. The Sudanese armed forces are the country's official military. They control much of the air force and heavy weaponry. Al-Burhan, their leader, presents himself as the defender of the state and institutional legitimacy, though his own coup undermined that claim. The Rapid Support Forces have a darker history. They evolved from the Janjaweed militias, the same groups responsible for atrocities in Darfur during the early 2000s genocide. The RSF was officially formed in 2013, ostensibly as a counterinsurgency force, but it operated more like a private army loyal to Hemedti. They're fast, brutal, and deeply embedded in Sudan's lucrative gold mining industry, which has funded their operations. Both sides have committed horrific human rights violations. Both have targeted civilians. And neither seems interested in a negotiated peace. The numbers are staggering, and they're only getting worse. Over 15,000 people have been killed, though the real number is likely much higher. More than 10 million people have been displaced, making this one of the largest displacement crises in the world. Nearly half the population, around 25 million people, need humanitarian assistance. Famine looms in multiple regions. In Darfur, ethnic violence has resurged. The RSF and allied Arab militias have been accused of systematic ethnic cleansing against non-Arab communities. Entire villages have been burned. Women and girls face widespread sexual violence as a weapon of war. Khartoum, once a bustling capital, is now a ghost town. Hospitals have been destroyed or occupied by fighters. Schools are shuttered. The economy has collapsed. Those who can flee have fled to neighboring Chad, Egypt, South Sudan, and beyond. But for millions of Sudanese, there's nowhere to go. They're trapped in active war zones, running out of food, water, and medicine, while the world largely looks away. Sudan's war doesn't exist in a vacuum. Its location makes it a critical geopolitical flashpoint. Sudan sits at the crossroads of the Middle East and Africa, bordering 7 countries. Instability here ripples outward. Egypt, to the north, fears millions of refugees crossing its border and worries about threats to Nile water security. Egypt has backed the SAF, seeing them as the more stable option. The United Arab Emirates has been accused of supporting the RSF, allegedly providing weapons and diplomatic cover. Why? Control over Sudan's Red Sea ports and gold resources would serve UAE strategic interests. Saudi Arabia and the US have tried to mediate, hosting talks in Jeddah that have repeatedly failed. Russia's Wagner Group, now rebranded, has also been linked to gold smuggling operations that benefit the RSF. Meanwhile, neighboring countries like Chad and South Sudan are overwhelmed with refugees, straining their own fragile systems. This isn't just Sudan's war, it's becoming a proxy conflict with regional and international players pursuing their own agendas while Sudanese civilians pay the price. So why isn't this the top story on every news channel? Several reasons. First, media attention is finite, and other crises, from Ukraine to Gaza to global elections, have dominated headlines. Sudan competes for coverage in an oversaturated news cycle. Second, Sudan lacks the geopolitical weight that forces major powers to care. It's not a major oil producer. It doesn't directly threaten Western security interests. This is what analysts call strategic irrelevance, and it's a death sentence for international attention. Third, access is extremely limited. Most international journalists can't safely report from Sudan, and what footage does emerge often doesn't go viral the way content from other conflicts does. The result? A massive humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in the shadows, with aid organizations desperately underfunded and diplomatic efforts half-hearted at best. So where does this go? The pessimistic view is that Sudan is headed for a prolonged, devastating civil war with no clear winner. Both the SAF and RSF have enough resources and external support to keep fighting, but neither has the strength to decisively win. That means more death, more displacement, and more suffering. Some experts warn Sudan could fragment entirely, with different regions falling under different armed groups, essentially a failed state scenario. The optimistic view, and it's hard to find much optimism here, is that sustained international pressure, combined with military stalemate, could eventually force both sides to negotiate. But every ceasefire so far has collapsed within days or hours. What's clear is that without serious international intervention, comprehensive sanctions on those fueling the conflict, and massive humanitarian aid, Sudan's crisis will only deepen. Sudan's war is a tragedy of epic proportions happening in real time. It's the product of decades of authoritarian rule, militarized politics, regional interference, and the failure of a democratic transition. But here's what we can't forget. Behind every statistic is a person. A mother fleeing with her children. A doctor trying to save lives without electricity or supplies. A young person who dreamed of a democratic future and watched it slip away. The international community has largely failed Sudan. But that doesn't mean we have to. Share this video. Talk about Sudan. Donate to organizations working on the ground.